Can you tell us a little bit about who are the Jewish people?
Well, we're a small people. We're just 16 million. That's barely more than half the population of Florida. 8 million live in Israel, 5 to 6 in the United States, and 2 to 3 in Latin America and Europe. We are also a very ancient people, like 3,500 years ago. We were slaves in Egypt. We left Egypt and we settled in Judea, this is the area around Jerusalem, and built a temple there. And then some 1,000 years later, we were invaded by the Babylonians and they deported us and destroyed the temple. And we stayed in Babylon and eventually they let us go. We came back to Judea, built another temple, and then we were invaded by the Greek and that didn't go so well. And then the Romans came and that was a disaster because we had a lot of smart young people who sounded a bit revolutionary, like, Jesus. And the Romans were very uncomfortable with that because the Romans needed lots of slaves and that's not what, these young people advocated for. So they got very angry. They burned the temple to the ground and they deported the 2 million Jews that lived there. And since that time, we've been scattered all over the world, although there was still always a small presence remaining in Jerusalem, mostly scholars. Now, the story doesn't end there. During the Middle Ages, we were persecuted for religious reasons, and then during the Inquisition 500 years ago in Spain and their provinces, which included Latin America, we were burned at the stake, again for religious reasons. And then in the Eastern Europe, there were many massacres called pogroms, and then there was the Holocaust.
Why is there so much anti-Semitism?
It's a very complicated question, and the reason has changed over the centuries. We've been accused of all kinds of different things. I think, and this is true for any form of racism, not just anti-Semitism, a lot is based on misinformation or absence of information. So I think a better way to approach it is try to get to know the other people, try to get to know the other. And so, for example, try to get to know who the Jewish people are a little bit better. So even though we're a small group, like I said before, we're absolutely not a race. For example, the Jews in New York, say the very religious one, are completely different from the Jews in Israel. Like these Jews in New York that we call Orthodox, he's very religious, they would never go into a war, right? Then Jews like me who come from Central Europe, we call the Ashkenazi Jews. Many of us are fair-skinned, blonde. Many of my family members have blue eyes. On the other hand, Jews who are called Sephardic from Spain, Northern Africa, the Middle East, like your grandpa, are much darker and they look more like their Arab neighbors. Then we have Jews from Africa, the Ethiopian Jews, many, who were Jewish thousands of years ago, who already were Jews. Then we have Asian Jews who converted, so we're definitely not a race. So since the times of the Bible, there have been intermarriages with conversions, even though Judaism never advocates conversion, never demands it or asks for it. But a lot of people have joined the faith because, they found this beautiful Jewish girl or beautiful Jewish boy, which they married, thousands of years ago. And a number of people have left the faith because they didn't feel comfortable with it. So religion did play a major role in our identity, but there are a lot of Jewish people who are not religious. And here is the thing. If you ask 10 Jews, what it means to be Jewish, you'll get 20 different answers, right? So it means different things to different people.
With such a long history of persecution, why would we choose to remain Jewish?
It is indeed a choice. We don't have to. I'm going to say, we're not a people. I'm not even sure what being a people. I'm going to use a more contemporary definition. We're more like an extended family. And I think what binds us together really is, some, like the very Orthodox religious Jews, they have, you know about the 10 Commandments, right? Everybody knows that. But they observe over 600 commandments, okay? Now, many other Jews who are barely religious or not even religious at all don't observe hardly any commandments, but they mostly celebrate, these very festive things like Passover or Hanukkah, and these are not religious events. These are historical commemorations. Passover is commemoration of, freedom from slavery. Hanukkah is commemoration from freedom from the Greeks. So these are not religious events at all. And of course, many of the students have seen a bar mitzvah in a movie or for real. So, students, you guys know how much fun this can be. So these events are very festive. We drink, we dance, we give presents. But they have barely anything to do with religion, and also we have a great sense of humor, but that's not exactly what keeps us together as, a people or an extended family.
So what does bind the Jews as a people?
Most of these festivals, what we really celebrate is life itself. You only have one life. And when we toast in any occasion, it's always to life. L'chaim in Hebrew means life, right? So I think what really binds all of us together is like 5 or 6 moral values. I'm not going to call them commandments, and I think these things are things that we all know we're supposed to do. Rule number 1 is remember. Remember the past, zachor in Hebrew, but always look to the future. Never look back to the past, okay? Rule number 2 is because you survived so much tragedy for so many centuries, you have to prove that you were worth it, okay? So there's the second thing called tikkun olam, which really in Hebrew means literally, it means fix the world, literally. So you have to do something meaningful of your life, right? Rule number 3 is tzedakah. Tzedakah, it's a form of charity, but it's more than that. It really means leave no one behind. That's what it means. So it's not just about giving money in an auction or a charity. You really have to make sure that everyone in the community and in other communities have to be able to stand on their own feet, because the welfare of the entire community depends on it. And you just don't do that out of love from them. It's really for the survival of the community, and you have to do it even if you don't love them. Right? Rule number 4 is you have to start learning from the minute you were born to the minute you die. You have to get an education, not just to get a job, but because your knowledge is the one thing no one can ever take away from you. They can take your family. They can take all your belongings, but your knowledge is yours. It's your power. And this is how you're going to rebuild, for the future. So rule number 6, education. Okay? Rule number 7,
Education.
Education, right? So education, education, education. So these 5 rules, I'm going to say, are really the moral basis of what has kept us together. It also has to do with honor your teachers, strive for, social justice and things like that. That's the kind of thing this is really about. Now, are we Jewish people all good? Not really. We've had good people, bad people, very bad people. We have smart people, we have not so smart people, we have very rich people, very, very poor people. So do all of us do these 5 things? You know, we know we're supposed to, we do it, you know, once in a while whenever they can, but at least we know we have to do it. And here is the thing, whenever you do that, you feel really, really good about yourself, right? And you don't have to be Jewish to do it. Anybody can do that, right?
And lastly, what would you like to say to my generation?
What I'd like to say to your generation is, yeah, a lot of things suck. I mean, there are terrible wars, the pollution is terrible, there are other problems, but I think you guys and girls are a very special generation. You can learn basically anything you want from anywhere in the world just by sitting at your computer, right? And also you'll probably only work 4 days a week, you know, AI and all this stuff. And despite, you know, the inequalities, you'll have access to the best health care and the best medication that even emperors of the past couldn't dream of. So you guys are probably have productive lives well into your 90s. So that will give you plenty of opportunity to do some of these things once in a while. So what I wish for your generation is just a lot of joy in making the best out of your very precious life.
Thank you, Grandma.